Before we start today's episode, a bit of housekeeping for all those listeners out there. Whichever your podcast listening platform of choice, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, reviews can make a huge difference. Not only do we value your feedback, which can help us create better content, but it will also help others discover the podcast. So spread the love and leave a review if you've got a minute. And with that, on with today's show. I'm the Reverend Dr. Jenny McKay, veterinarian and minister in secular employment, environmentalist, activist, and self-confessed cat junkie. But believe it or not, I have never been asked for advice about hedgehogs by the beloved poet Pam Ayres. Someone who has is my guest today, Pauly from Hedgehog Cabin. So welcome to the show, Pauly. It's lovely to have you join us.
Oh, thanks very much for inviting me. I'm really honoured, Jenny. You are such a fascinating woman. I had no idea until I started reading about you.
You are too kind, and you are equally fascinating. And I think it's amazing that you had this brush with British poetry royalty and the little hedgehog illustration Pam drew in the book that she sent you. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. Pam has been talking to each other for years now. She's a lovely woman. I think most people do realise she's, very kind and funny and very clever, very intelligent. Most folk are unaware she's enormously passionate about hedgehogs. And I think over the years, having been disappointed by the lack of good, trustworthy advice available from the many self-professed hedgehog experts, naming no names. She was very pleased to find me, and the book dedication, that darling little drawing she did. She's quite the artist too. She really is a very artistic woman as well. And it was just a little thank you for her being her go-to for advice and help with her own garden hogs. And I was thrilled. I was so touched. It's a lovely gesture, and I'm very proud to be so honoured, like you say, by poetry royalty.
That is brilliant. And it's in her latest poetry book, isn't it?
Yes. And it's a lovely book because it's got the whole lot. Every poem she's written is in there. And some of them you'll read and you'll remember back from, when you were a child, perhaps. And when she was on the television, brilliant stuff. She's very clever, and it's so hard to be simple and clever. It's much easier to sound complicated and clever. But what she does, she just does a lovely story in such a funny but deep and touching way. She's a wonderful woman. I love her.
And I didn't know that she was so interested in hedgehogs. And of course, for those listeners out there, Pauly is part of Hedgehog Cabin, or really the founder of Hedgehog Cabin. Can you tell us how it all started and how it's grown over the years?
Yes, well, I am Hedgehog Cabin. It started, like with most people, I had sick hedgehogs in my garden and didn't know where to take them. And the rescues I did go to, I was so disappointed in. They were filthy, the conditions were cramped, and seemingly zero attention to hygiene. And as an ex-NHS nurse, all my hackles went up. I thought, what are you doing? I remember being in the queue, and the woman in front of me had this pair of yellow marigold gloves on, and she was taking each hedgehog, roughly lifting his legs up to 6, and then taking the next one with the same pair of gloves.
Oh.
And I thought, every disease a hedgehog has, first of all, not only can other hedgehogs catch them, there's zoonotic as well. It was just, and I thought, I can do so much better. How arrogant and foolish I was, Jenny. I thought I knew it all. I knew all about a human body, so a hedgehog should be child's play. What an arrogant fool I was. These little creatures are fascinating. They're magical little animals. And as as you know, being a vet, wild animals are so completely different to domesticated animals, completely different. Everything about them is different. Their behavior, and their needs and everything. And it took years and years to learn about them. And fortunately and unfortunately, the only way I could learn was by being on the front line, actually doing it every day. There was no one to teach me. It was just going in, obviously, with some nursing skills, being okay with wounds and hygiene, but the learning the drugs and the dosages, and just how they need to be treated, the respect for them. Stress is a huge factor with wildlife. Stress kills wildlife, where it doesn't with domestic animals. So everything you do has to be to reduce the stress. And of course, we as humans, we're predators, cause the most stress of all to wildlife. But over the years, I gradually just fell in love with these charming, gentle, intelligent, wonderful little creatures, and Hedgehog Cabin was born. That was, around 22 years ago now.
22, oh my goodness. In the millennium, almost. Yes, after the millennium.
And it started I had a cabin in the garden that now and again when my brother used to stay, he'd sleep in there, and I did jigsaw puzzles in there and the ironing, all those exciting things. And so I sort of made that my hedgehog cabin, the little hospital, and kitted that out. I've got 4 buildings now. It's still just me.
Oh, my word. And did you give up your nursing profession?
Yes, I was on the verge of retiring anyway, and I just retired a little bit earlier because, again, the time it takes, it's not something you can do as a hobby. It is a full-time, not just... Obviously, starting off learning is a full-time job. It's as difficult as anything in the healing industry, as it were. You need to know about the whole person and the whole animal to be able to heal one little part of them.
And we don't learn very much about wildlife or hedgehogs in the vet course. So I know as vets, when they arrive with us, we get quite alarmed. So you will know so much more than we do.
Well, so you should. I know you're a big cat lover as well. I've got lots of cats that come in here, stray cats, that have been like the latest one. She's 15 years old and been dumped. Oh. Which is very sad. But seeing as I'm a place that's full of cat food, I do get a lot of cats. And I wouldn't dream, I've got one at the moment that's going to the vets tomorrow. I wouldn't dream of doing anything with her. I've got loads of drugs. I'm quite capable of injecting. I've got lots of, antibiotics, all sorts of things. But I wouldn't dream of it because a veterinary surgeon is the expert. And the same way, I love it that vets do refer to me because I am the hedgehog expert. Yeah. It's not a matter of ego. It's purely, I know about them, and they're a specialist subject. They really are specialists. And there's things that, most good vets, as you know, will refer on, if they're not feeling confident with them. But there's things, yes. The tiniest dose, say, of Mesogam, the pain relief drug, the yes. tiniest dose that's suitable for a kitten is 5 times the lethal dose for a hedgehog. And lots of vets don't realise that and have killed hedgehogs that way. Frontline is toxic to hedgehogs, and yet this myth persists that all hedgehogs have got fleas and they need just a little bit of rubbing down the frontline.
That's right.
And by the time they come to me, they're snorting bloods and dying. It's toxic.
Terrible.
So I always make a point of saying, please take your hedgehogs to a rescue, never a vet. Mm-hmm. Vets are there for domesticated animals. And plus, it's not fair. They're a business. They're a money-making business, and they should be there. Although there's lots of lovely, lovely vets, they're a money-making business. And unfortunately, wildlife, they're our second-class citizens. All they have is people like me. But there is no other provisions apart from rescues. And also, obviously, we've got the accommodation.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Really
So you can do so much more for them than than we can. So we would
Absolutely,
always
yeah.
refer to someone like you. And what, in your opinion, is the biggest threat to the UK hedgehog population? Because it's really plummeting, isn't it?
It really is. And it's the same thing everywhere. It's habitat, destruction of habitat. And habitat, most people don't realize it doesn't just mean where they live and sleep, it's where their food lives and sleeps. And so when you cut down that ivy and those stinging nettles, because, woe betide your little child gets stung on his legs, let's starve all the hedgehogs by cutting down the nettles. It makes me so cross. It's so short-sighted. All the insects in this country and in all over the world, at the winter time, they overwinter. Some obviously do it in all different forms, some in pupae, some in larvae, and some, as adults, but they all overwinter. If you cut down those overwintering places, like the brambles and the nettles, and tidy up your garden and get the leaf litter all together and all the dead vegetation, your garden in the winter is a nursery. All what's growing there are next year's babies. That's what they're growing. If you want pollinators next year, if you want butterflies next year, if you want food for the hedgehogs, then leave them alone in the winter. Leave your garden. Just if it annoys you, close your eyes to it.
Because for the better good, you're right. We seem to put the appearance of our gardens and the neatness and tidiness above what's best for the environment and the creatures that could live there.
Absolutely. I'm sure most people realize this year, because they saw it with their own eyes, the lack of butterflies. Just that one thing. That's an indication, tiny indication of what's going on. There were no butterflies this year because last year their overwintering places were destroyed. So this year there's no butterflies. And although it's not so obvious, the same happened with the beetles. The beetles need, places to live and overwinter. And the only little clue you'll get, most people will be saying, what's happened this year? It's so wet, we're overrun with slugs. It's got nothing to do with the weather. The slug's natural predator is a little beetle called the ground beetle, a little black, insignificant beetle. And it's the slug's natural predator. But we've killed them off because we like neat and tidy. We don't like messy, tuffety grass and dead vegetation. But these beetles do. You probably noticed there were no maybugs knocking at your window.
Yes, that's right. I noticed that.
It's so sad.
It's sad, isn't it?
And the knockdown effect, because our ecosystem is strong and tough, but it's also so fragile. It's like glass. You can easily break it. And when it's broken like that, almost 50% of a hedgehog's diet is caterpillars. If you've got no beetles, you've got no caterpillars, and the hedgehogs starve. And that's what's happening now. Our hedgehogs are dying of starvation. That's what's caused this almost terrible decline. It's not the roads, although the roads do contribute because of our love of overnight delivery. And I'm guilty of that, just as you are. Oh, yes, overnight.
We all do that.
That puts more lorries on the road at night, whereas the roads used to be safe for them at night. Now it's full of Argos lorries and other lorries. But the most thing is starvation. That's what they're dying of. Every single hedgehog through these doors this year, no matter what they were coming in for, broken legs, strimmer wounds, were also suffering from starvation. Now, this also puts to paid this ridiculous myth, again propagated by the so-called hedgehog experts, that hedgehogs eat slugs and snails. Well, Jenny, I'm sure you know that's absolute nonsense, and it also happens to be one of my hobby horses. All you need is just a bit of common sense. We all know hedgehogs are dying of starvation. That's point one. We all know that hedgehogs hibernate. Animals hibernate because there's not enough food for them through the winter. It's a survival strategy.
Mhm.
If there was enough food, they wouldn't hibernate. They're quite capable. A bear is quite capable of withstanding winter weather. It's not capable of withstanding starvation. If hedgehogs really did eat slugs and snails, which are available all year round, they don't hibernate, then no hedgehog would ever die of starvation and no hedgehog would ever need to hibernate. So please tell that to anyone who insists they eat slugs and snails.
That is a very, very important message, isn't it? And I think I've heard another one that cats kill hedgehogs.
Cats are capable of lots of things, but they're also very easily fooled, and they're self-preservationists. And hedgehogs are a hard meal for any predator. They've got a wonderful array of spines that they can deploy in a fraction of a second. And not only do they erect them, they crisscross them. And that hurts, believe you me. My fingers are tattooed with millions and millions of little pointy holes over the years. And they are actually tattooed because sometimes the hedgehogs, when you pick them up, they've been in newspaper bedding and they've got a bit of newspaper ink on them.
Right.
And they tattoo that into my fingers. So it looks like my fingers have all got little black heads in.
Oh.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Well, I never saw one of my cats with a hedgehog. I mean, I always thought that their protective spiny coat, I mean, it would just be impossible for a carnivore to get them, unless I suppose they're really sick and they can't curl up properly.
And not with an adult one. The only time hedgehogs are at danger of cats is when they're babies, when they're newborns. Before, they can only curl when they reach 11 days old. So before that time, they can't curl and deploy their spines, and they're vulnerable. And also the sounds they make sound very much like baby birds, which is very attractive to cats.
Right.
So,
Oh, well, I'm glad you've dispelled some of those myths. And I know you're very active going round schools as well. Particularly, you've been to a local primary school, haven't you, where you were able to give some of your expert advice? Are you encouraged when you see the young people and the enthusiasm they have for helping the environment?
Fantastic. For children to be able to learn something and then to be able to go home and teach their parents, I think that's wonderful. I think we really need to bring back, they were called when I went to school, nature study. We had nature study lessons.
I remember those. Yes.
Do you remember?
Yeah. I never had a hedgehog, but it was, stones and leaves.
Yes, and tadpoles and things.
That's right.
And what they were about was learning to respect and protect our precious indigenous wildlife. And it's shame because we don't have that anymore. And it's critical because children learn from what they see. It's a process called observational learning. They watch and imitate the behaviors of others. And they need to learn from a variety of models, not just their parents, teachers, and people they see on the television or out in public. They learn from all of that and collect a whole rounded education. So we all need to do it, not just, the teachers and the educators.
That's really, really important, isn't it? Educators and the local communities working together.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
And you provide lots of practical advice on creating hedgehog-friendly gardens. And I think a lot of us have heard about gardens now. They're very enclosed and there's no kind of tunneling or space for hedgehogs to move between different areas. Is that an important factor in their decline as well from your viewpoint?
As we've touched on earlier, that the roads are busier now. And hedgehogs, it was how they used to move was from garden to garden, because there were no structures in between, or it'd be just a hedge or a picket fence or something. They could move and go, so they could work along the whole street without ever coming out onto the pavement or road. They could go from garden to garden, and that simply doesn't happen anymore because we've got concrete at the bottom of the fences, and it's so easy to make that little just a little hole in there, only the size of a CD case. But access is absolutely critical, really is critical. One hedgehog needs to visit at least 20 gardens every night to get enough food to stay healthy.
Goodness.
That's a lot of gardens, and that we just don't have 20 joined up gardens anymore. So these hedgehogs are having to travel further, using up more energy. And every wildlife's life is the whole thing is a balance of energy expenditure versus energy gain. And if you have to walk 3/4 of a mile and only find one caterpillar, you're not going to do it again the next night. That's what's happening to our hedgehogs. So we need these corridors. And obviously, you can't do it through every garden because some gardens aren't friendly. But at least some gardens, as much as we can, have access for them. It's really, really important. Even if you think, oh, they'll never come in my garden, all I've got is a yard. They will. That you have a yard, you may have some gravel there. Loads of insects love to leave their larvae in gravel.
Right.
And a hedgehog will have a fun time sorting through your gravel for you.
Wow, that is a very, very good point. So what is one simple thing that everyone could do to help hedgehogs, apart from having these gaps in your fences if you can?
Well, right now, as we speak, we're in December, and what's really important is ice-free water. Hedgehogs die, and all animals die of dehydration in the winter just as much as they do in the summer. If you don't see puddles out there, neither do the hedgehogs. And natural water dries up very quickly. And of course, in winter, we've got the added danger of it freezing and making it inaccessible. So ice-free water, every living creature needs water. It's the stuff of life. So ice-free water, you can keep it ice-free by keeping it closer to your house. The residue warmth of your house will keep it in plastic rather than metal or ceramic because plastic insulates it better. And so you've got access, ice-free water and food. Everyone says, oh, but they're all hibernated now. No, they haven't. Only full-size, healthy hedgehogs are able to hibernate. Hibernation isn't just going to sleep for a long time. It's a very intense and dangerous process whereby the body, the metabolic system is lowered. The metabolic rate is so low that the heartbeat is only beating once or twice a minute. There's only one breath or so a minute. It's an incredibly dangerous process to go into, and you can only enter it if you're healthy. If you went in, say, even just with some ringworm, that would go mad and have nothing, normally your immune system be able to fight that off. And of course, if you're in hibernation, it won't. So they have to be healthy and obviously no internal parasites. And they have to be full-sized because they need to withstand ambient temperatures. If they're not creating their own warmth, they need to be at stand ambient temperatures. And they do that obviously by insulating themselves with bedding. But not every hedgehog is able to reach that happy state of being full-sized and healthy. So right now, there's lots of late-born babies. I was phoned this morning by a 90-gram baby. They're still around. These late-born babies are still around now. And obviously, they're far too small. They don't have the fortitude to withstand cold temperatures. They don't have the insulation. And there's no food around. So those little babies and the sickly adults, we need to provide food for them. And the only food that's safe for hedgehogs, as you know, is cat or dog food. Yes. And out of those, dry kitten food is perfect. Just make sure that the first ingredient on the list of ingredients is meat, not cereal, because hedgehogs are insectivores, so they can't process cereal. They don't have a cecum, so they can't process plant material. It needs to be meat and dry kitten food. Kitten food is good because of the size. Hedgehogs have got tiny mouths and the kitten food tends to be smaller. And also the phosphorus to calcium ratio tends to be a little bit better with kitten foods, which is good for hedgehogs. And also, of course, if it's dry food, it won't freeze on winter nights and it won't dry out on summer nights. Having said that, if you've started feeding them wet food, continue, because hedgehogs are creatures of habit. They don't like change, and it's not because they're fussy. It's a survival instinct. It's, I ate this yesterday and it didn't kill me, so I'm going to eat it again today.
And it's another old wives' tale, isn't it, about feeding them milk?
Oh gosh, milk will kill them. Goodness knows how many hedgehogs were killed by people fielding the milk, and it's one of those milk and bread. Bread is no good for any animal. It's no good
No.
for us. It's no good for any animal at all. I love it. I have to say, but it's no good for any animal. It really is. It's empty calories. It's no good. And milk, hedgehogs, it's more than lactose intolerance. It starts off a chain reaction, and they get severe diarrhea, and they very quickly. It's a horrible way to die. They die of dehydration. And
Oh,
it's nigh on impossible to stop up that diarrhea once they get it.
right.
So
Oh, dear.
it's really sad that people still do this. Not so much nowadays, but still people find babies and try to feed them, with cow's milk. And
No.
I know it's so bad. If only everybody knew and thought about it logically, why would you feed another animal's milk to a different animal? We're the only animals that drink other animals' milk.
That's very true. That is very true. Well, I'm glad you're out there passing on all these important messages to people and reinforcing this, Pauly. It's badly needed.
It is. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do this, Jenny. You're fantastic. As you know, it's so critical that these specialist little animals get the correct treatment from experienced and knowledgeable rescues. And it's a hard message to get across because there's so much misinformation on the internet, and that's, like it or not, that's where everybody goes for their information advice now. You can't beat it. You have to be there, and you have to spend time there, which is something I do every day to make sure people, the messages does get out there. And it does. It's great. I love it. I'm absolutely love when people say, oh, I took a hedgehog to rescue because I remember you saying once this, that and the other. And I think that's fantastic. It's brilliant.
It's
brilliant.
good. It's good. So, and like you say, you've got a good following on.
Yes.
Well, we were talking about X, but yeah, we still keep calling it Twitter. Twitter X. You have a substantial following there, so the message is definitely growing.
It is, and there's some lovely stories. My favorite one is there's a waitress in Colorado, and she happened to be waiting on tourists from England, and overheard them talking about feeding their hedgehogs birdseed. And she was able to go over and tell them, Hedgehog Cabin says no, birdseed is fatal for hedgehogs. And she, in Colorado, in America, was able to tell them. And I think that's fantastic. What an incredible tool Twitter is to be able to make that worldwide information. It's fantastic, isn't it?
It is. It's wonderful for the good information. We, as you said, we just have to be careful about sifting out the wrong information.
Yes.
So what about a sickly hedgehog? If somebody sees a poorly hedgehog, it's out during the day, it looks injured or sickly, what would be your recommendation?
Take him to a rescue immediately. There are rescues all over the country. If you just put in Google, my nearest hedgehog rescue, you'll find them. The first thing you need to do is pick him up. They don't bite. They're gentle, quiet little animals, so don't be frightened of them. Put on some gloves because their spines do hurt. They won't kill you, but they do hurt. And they'll curl up, so be prepared for that. And just bring them indoors. The reason they come out in the daytime when they're sick is because they've become hypothermic. And hypothermia, as you know, is a stage of dying where all the blood gets redirected to the vital organs and it leaves the extremities feeling cold. So they come out in the daytime to get the heat of the sun. And what you need to do is reverse that hypothermia because that can quickly kill them. So bring them indoors, and it's contact warmth they need, not ambient warmth. So even on the hottest summer day, you need to make up a hot water bottle, just with hot tap water, and put that right next to them so they're against it. It's contact warmth. Scrunch up lots of kitchen roll, put that on top so they can hide. That will reduce their stress. We talked about
stress
is the biggest
killer.
Yes, absolute killer of wildlife. So reduce their stress by covering them with lots of scratching up newspaper, put in a dish of water. They won't be able to drink while they're hypothermic, but as soon as that's reversed, they will be able to, and it's more than likely they'll be dehydrated if they're out in the daytime. And then put that box in a room that's got a window, because daylight will make them feel sleepy just the way nighttime makes us feel sleepy. It's the opposite. In a nice quiet room, away from the human voice. That's very, very stressful for them. And then get on the phone and ring a rescue. And if the local one is full, try the next one. There will always be a space. Just keep ringing and don't give up. Don't leave messages, please. Don't leave messages. My messages are about 4 days old now.
Yeah, you've got so much to do, haven't you? Yes.
They are absolutely. They're for non-emergencies only. When it's an emergency like that, you just ring. If they don't answer, wait a minute and ring again. I can't always stop what I'm doing to answer the phone. So just keep ringing until you get a human being pick up the phone and advise you. And please don't take any notice in the summer if there's nonsense. Oh, it's maybe a mum out because mums come out in the daytime. No, they do not.
Right.
They come out maybe if the nights are very short, in the months of June and July, and when we've only got, say, 4 hours of darkness. They will extend that because their needs are greater, obviously. So they need more foraging time, and they'll extend that short night by staying out later in the morning, so you'll see them in the morning.
But apart from that, bad sign. Very bad sign if they're out in the day.
Yes, and if in doubt, ring a rescue. This is what we do all day long. We triage on the phone. Okay. So we know all the right questions to ask. We'll ask you the questions and we'll be able to say, no, that's okay. That's a mum getting some food, or or that's a sick hedgehog. We'll be able to do that. So when in doubt, grab first, ask questions later as well, because there's nothing so frustrating. You've just explained to the person, yes, that's someone really sick. Please go and get him. And they've said, oh, while I was talking to you, he's disappeared. So grab first, ask questions later. And a rescue will talk you through that. And don't worry about, doing it. Just get on the phone and speak to them. They'll be able to advise you.
Oh, brilliant. That's really, really good advice. And your work, it's recently been highly recognised, hasn't it? Because you became a finalist in the BBC's Make a Difference Awards back in September. That's absolutely tremendous.
I love it now. I love being able to say I'm a multi-award winner. Yeah. I was gobsmacked. I was so touched. That so many members of the public voted for me. I thought that was so kind and so lovely, and that I passed 2 different panels of judges to become one of the 4 finalists. I think that's absolutely amazing. It was such a lovely pat on the back. And that's something we all need now and again.
We do. It keeps us going, doesn't it?
Yes. We can all work without it, but the work is so much lighter with it. Oh. Yes, that was lovely. And it inspires me to do more. When I think lots of people, it's like a little kid on the stage. If you clap them, they'll do a little bit more and a little curtsy. It's wonderful to be praised. It really is. And it's a lovely thing that the BBC did to include people that work with animals this year. I thought it was a good thing to do.
So good, so good. I mean, you're right. I mean, as a Reverend Vet, a lot of the stuff I put out on social media, I don't know really what happens to it. But when you get a response from somebody who says, thank you, you've made a difference, or because of you, I did this, it's just marvellous. Makes you keep going, doesn't it?
It does. It inspires you and it lifts you. It's an exhausting work. It really is, because it's not just physically, it's long hours, but emotionally, it's horrible. I see some horrible things, really horrible, horrible things. And that wears away at your soul every single day. So you need that bit of inspiration, that lifting now and again. And there's nothing nicer than, as you say, someone saying, oh, I did that because of you. It's wonderful.
And it often happens at the time when you're maybe feeling lowest about something something positive just pops up. And,
yes, it was. Yes.
Oh. And some of your hedgehogs, they've got really, really fantastic survival stories. Can you tell us a little bit about Theo and Shepherd? I saw
Ah,
them on X.
darling Theo. Theo is a frequent flyer, I'm afraid. I think he may have been either born here or I raised him, because whenever he's in trouble, he goes off to the wild. He's a wild living hedgehog. I think he lives in the woods at the bottom of my road. But whenever he's in trouble, he comes back to me. And I think that's just amazing, amazing. The thought process alone, that he must get back to me, and he books himself in and he comes right into the hospital, into an empty pen, not just in one of the feeders or a house in the garden, right into a hospital pen, books himself in. And this time I put the video on Twitter because it just broke my heart watching him.
I know.
I get all choked up now thinking
They're intelligent, aren't they? It's obviously worked out. I want to go back there. I want to set up home there again.
He was, I think, from the injuries, from the experience, I've seen these kind of injuries before. His legs were caught in a rat trap and degloved. His both back feet were degloved. And he walked on those degloved feet all the way in. And you see him walk. You'd never guess there was anything wrong with him. You'll see this on my Twitter feed. And he walks all the way in, right until he gets into the pen where he knows nobody can see him, no predators are watching. Yeah. And then he collapses. And then he can barely move. And then he can barely lift his leg. And then he can barely hold his own weight. And
poor little thing.
Absolutely heartbreaking to see that. And the injuries were severe. My lovely, lovely vet, after it, of course, it always happens on a Friday night. And of course it does. He needed the wounds, obviously I cleaned them up and bathed them. But after a couple of days after the weekend, they needed just, the edges tidying up so they could heal a bit better. And my vet said, "Oh, you do realise it's down to the bone?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm afraid it is." They were really, really on the top of his feet, down to the bone, really awful, awful injuries. But these little magical creatures, they have got such fortitude. They are so determined. They have survived 15 million years. Mm-hmm. They've survived the Ice Age. They've survived persecution. They walked with hairy mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. These incredible. Little creatures are born survivalists, and he's doing well. He's got the first, sort of rudimentary covering of skin, and he can weight bear on all of his feet. He can use them to scratch. And he's doing really, really well. I'm really hoping they're a bit too tender still for him to go out.
Okay.
To be freed. So he's still here, but he's in a very large pen where, he can build up his muscle tone again and toughen up his feet a bit. But I'm hoping he hibernates here because I worry about him.
I know. I was going to say, it's going to be really, really sad for you when he actually is freed.
Oh, it is. But I've done it. This is the 6th time, Jenny. Sixth time. He's come back with internal parasites, with fluke, with lungworm, with all sorts. And I think this is his worst. So I think one foot was the worst injury I've ever seen here. It really was bad.
He's like the cat with 9 lives, isn't he?
Absolutely. He really is. And he's such a sweetheart. He takes it all in his stride. He really does. He's a sweetheart.
He's an angel.
He's doing really well. And who else do you ask? Oh,
Shepherd.
Shepherd's one, again, typical of this time of year, these babies, they're born late to mums that haven't had good food. They've had to scrounge around and eat contaminated food. So the mums often have a huge internal parasite burden, even while they're pregnant, and they can cross the placental barrier into the babies. And so the babies are actually born with this little ticking time bomb.
Oh.
And by the time they get to about 400 or 500 grams, which is sort of about the size of a grapefruit, these parasites start causing real trouble. And mostly it's lungworm. And the lungworms, because it irritates the lining of the lung protects itself by producing mucus, and obviously the lungs fill up with mucus and stop the air getting through so well, and the hedgehog starts getting trouble breathing, and that's when people hear the bubbly breath or the constricted breathing of hedgehogs. If you ever hear that, that's an emergency. You need to get them to a rescue straight away. And Dear Little Shepherd was one of these. He's probably one of this year's late babies, and he came in at 520 grams. And that's the really average, that they come in at. And he had the works. He's got lungworm, roundworm, fluke, a little bit of coccidia as well thrown in.
Right, but he's got all the medication now.
Yes. But because he was grew up in a garden, or found a garden when he left mum, that provided food. This is what's so important, Jenny, and this is a lifesaver. Because he found that garden that had ice-free water and good quality kitten food, he's really well nourished and really well hydrated, which means he can take the medication. They're powerful drugs.
Yes.
And I could start it on day one.
Right.
As soon as he came in. So from day one, he had levamisole, for his lungworm, which immediately gave him ease, because it kills the larvae straight away. Works a little bit longer on the eggs. But it gave him easement straight away and made so much difference. And within 3 days, he was coming up to 700 grams.
Gosh, that's
because
really
all those,
good.
It is, isn't it? All the roundworms that were,
yeah.
Preventing him taking on nourishment.
Yes.
Killed.
So otherwise, you would have had to have fed him up, wouldn't you, a bit before he could withstand medication?
Absolutely. And get him really stable before, getting a hedgehog that's dehydrated, stable and hydrated enough is pretty tricky. It really is pretty tricky, especially if they've been eating badly and they've got diarrhea, and it's coming out one end as fast as you can get it in.
So well done to the family who had left the food and water out in that garden.
Absolutely.
Saved his life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those people doing that and having a trail cam on them, so that they heard the bubbly breath. They heard him. Okay. That was his lifesaver. That's why he's alive now. Yes, yeah.
A little miracle.
It is, really is.
So you're so busy, Pauly. You really, really are. With all your hedgehog rescue and conservation, what do you do in your downtime? Do you have any downtime?
No, I don't. It sounds very get your violins out, but I really am devoted to hedgehogs, and I spend every waking moment helping them. Not only in the hospital physically, I give advice on Twitter, as you know. I do at least 2 hours a day, usually more on Twitter. There's lots of questions on there, and via email to members of the public and to other rescues. I mentor other rescues and vets as well, not just here, but in other countries. There's lots of countries where there are no rescues, and there's just some lovely, lovely vets that really want to know because, like here, our training is only for domesticated animals. And I help them, and I help advise some animal charities that are helping in war-torn countries.
Do you know, I know a vet in Gaza. They're having such a terrible time. But absolutely. Yeah, I know he was trying to rescue some hedgehogs. Now, I don't know what precisely he was doing to them, but we did see a picture of some of these hedgehogs, and they look very different to the European ones.
Yes,
they were quite ears. Light, big ears and a long snout.
Yes. This is, but they are so sweet. Those lovely, wonderful, brave people. I've got nothing but praise for them. I think they're absolutely fantastic. But again, most of them are vets and they don't have any knowledge of wildlife. So I am helping with them, advising them, and also advising drugs. There's, there are very specific drugs that are safe for hedgehogs, as we discussed earlier, and aren't, are safe on domestic animals and aren't safe on hedgehogs. They've got a peculiar metabolism. So I do that.
You could go out and do lectures at some of the vet schools.
I have actually been asked to do that, and I've said yes, I will. in time when I retire. Yes.
So you definitely don't go on holiday then?
No, gosh, no.
No, you couldn't.
I haven't had a day when I haven't worked for, oh gosh, the last day I didn't work, or that's a lie. Last year, the king invited me to his coronation.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
that was the biggest pat on the back. I was so, so proud about that. I thought it was fantastic. And I thought, how did you know? How do these
Oh,
people know these things?
yeah,
Haven't
yeah,
told
yeah,
me. Are
yeah.
you sure? And when I got the phone call, that was just amazing. I thought someone was messing around. Oh, you're ringing from Buckingham Palace, are you?
Oh,
Yes,
for the
you are.
coronation. Whoa.
I know, and it was so nice. So that was the last time, or the only time I've
You had a
had
day
a day
off.
off. Actually, I didn't have a day off. I got up really, really early and did all the work before.
And then you probably came back and did some more
And then
work.
I did. As soon as I came back, I got my dress off and got my scrubs on and carried on. No, I do it every day. And what I do today, I'll be doing on Christmas Day and every other day. You can't, I mean, they're sick every day. You can't have time off and you can't have days off.
No.
Some people do obviously have people that take over,
Hmm.
but also I'm immunosuppressed, so I have to be careful. I don't have anyone working here. But even
Right. It is
before then,
just you. It is
yes, it is
you.
just
Yeah.
me. But even before then, I wouldn't, because the what I see in the morning when I walk into the hospital in the morning, the first thing I do is smell the air. I can tell the state of their injuries, their infections by what smell they are. As you know, not only just like infected wounds, but
Hmm.
the bacteria in their poo smells, when they're infected with parasites. I can smell fluke a mile off. I can smell a hedgehog. I
Right.
don't even have to put them under a microscope. I can smell roundworm just by smelling some poo. It comes in very handy in certain circles, I must add. But if I didn't do that in the morning, that is like me coming in and reading the night nurse's log. It
Right.
really is. It's
Right.
it's it's so much information. If I see a little bit of tagging and tearing in the corner, and that hedgehog was otherwise quite content, I would test for coccidia and
Okay.
fluke. It's just those little things that if I had someone else helping and doing the cleaning, I would miss that. I would miss,
Hmm.
and that's half of the treatment is observation. It really is
Yes.
observation. So I would miss that. That's why, and the space I allow is why I've got a success rate, a survival rate in the high 90s, when the UK
Fantastic.
average is a tragic 47%.
Oh,
It's
yes. More
that's a
people
huge
need to listen to your advice, Pauly.
yes, yes, yes. You tell them, Jenny. Oh, you are lovely. Thank you
So
so much.
for our listeners, just before we end up, how can people support Hedgehog Cabin?
Right. Well, please do follow me on Twitter. It's Hedgehog Cabin at Twitter. Also a website. I've got hedgehogcabin.info. And you can support me by making less sick
Oh,
hedgehogs.
yes.
So if you visit my website or my Twitter feed, and there's lots of infograms on there that I make up that's got good information, please just spread them wherever you can on across all social medias. I try to make them in a JPEG form so that they can go across
Right.
all
Right.
social medias. Spreading those, most people are good and kind and will do the right thing if they know what that right
Yeah.
thing is. That's the big
Yeah.
problem. So the more you spread the information, the better it is, the better the hedgehogs will do, and the less patience I'll have. And then one
Oh.
day I might even have time to write a book,
I was
Jenny.
going to say, or you might even get a holiday day.
Oh, I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Oh, well, it's been so lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. And I wish you all the very best for the future. And I know I'm going to go straight out after this interview and put down a plate of water and some kitten food. So
Oh, good for you.
thank you very much. Bye,
Thank you very
Pauly.
much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Bye bye now.